Well, hi everybody, my name's Mr. Verzat, and you can call me Mr. V. I'll be your new 2D and 3D design teacher. This is meant to be the orientation video for students who arrive on the first day, and mainly I use it for students who maybe weren't there that day or need to get caught up and review something that we covered in class. So sit back and enjoy. Well, welcome everybody. I'm really excited to have you as my student. 2D, 3D design. Mainly, we're going to cover what the class is about and the general structure of how we've designed our art classes here at Penn in order so that you can be fully prepared for the full experience that we have. 2D design is made to be a lot of fun and cover two specific areas. The first is we want to train you up in the fundamentals that are required in future art classes. For example, in order to sculpt or paint or draw or go into graphic design, the skills that you would need in those classes, the foundational ones, are what we aim to teach you here. Now, the second goal of the art department is to help you generate an authentic appreciation for the arts through enrichment. The way I try to meet this is to first teach you skills that will allow you to create anything from the imagination alone. And second, generate in you guys a love for two-dimensional media. Personally, I'm a professional illustrator. I get paid to do this stuff outside of my teaching profession. And I want to bring that in here to show you guys that I started the exact same way that you did. And many of you are better than I was when I was in school. If I can do it, definitely you can too. So this is kind of a sample of some of the classes that we offer here. I don't think it's all of them, but in the fine arts department we've got, for example, drawing, sculpting, painting, photography, and I teach graphic design and entertainment design. But in order to get access to all of those, you first need to have gone through 2D, 3D design. Once you've gone through that, then you could progress all the way up the chain. Like, so let's say you really like drawing based on some of the things that you've seen in 2D, 3D. And so you go into drawing 1 and then drawing 2 and 3. 2D, 3D basically unlocks access to all of this. We want the students who go through one of the classes with one of the teachers to be able to function in another advanced class from a different teacher. Now, one thing that's different this year is that the 2D teachers are going to be teaching the 2D part of this class, and the 3D teachers are going to teach the 3D. So at semester, you'll swap teachers. Let's look at a term called medium. The plural for that is media. Medium is the category of tools that an artist creates with. Now, the word that you've heard me say quite a bit before is fundamentals. And what fundamentals are, those are foundational skills that something else is based on. Now, the goal in 2D, 3D is not to teach you medium. We want to teach you fundamentals and then go into those respective mediums that you're interested in. Now, each teacher teaches a little bit differently, and so some teachers might use a wider variety of mediums than others in their 2D class, but overall, this is what you're going to learn. Now, in art, medium, if you think of planets orbiting a star, medium is an orbit over fundamentals. Mediums change, they come and go. Like, there was a time when computer painting didn't exist, and now it is, it's there. If you want to use clay, you need to learn how to use clay. And that's where what you would call medium specific skills. So if you're going to paint, you need to learn how to use the brush, you need to learn what brush strokes are, how to mix paint, and those are skills that are tied directly to that medium, and they orbit that medium. However, fundamentals, those are timeless. Things like perspective, it'll always be the same. Perspective is the same now as it was, like 200 years ago. Breaking things into forms and shapes and how light works, it's the same now, and it will always be the same. The only thing that changes is medium and medium skills. Now, I'm mostly a 2D teacher. I do a lot of digital painting, but I'm also a drawer and I'm a painter myself. But in my class, the majority of what you're going to use, the majority of mediums, are going to be drawing related. So like pencils, pens, colored pencils, and so on. But my goal in this class is if you master these fundamentals, no matter what, and you're a diligent student, you should be able to create anything from your mind alone without having to look at other stuff. Now, that'll be at a very basic beginner level, but that's the ultimate goal. And you'll have enough training where you could go off on your own and continue to train throughout your life and have these skills develop. So what are these fundamentals? Well, these fundamentals are the big three. The first and most important is perspective. That's how you draw with an illusion of three-dimensional space. That's the foundation for everything. And if you can create forms in three-dimensional space, then we move on to lighting and volume. And that way you can create a light source and plot light and be able to calculate where the shadows and the light is going to be in that three-dimensional space. Now from there, then we take basic form breakdowns. We'll look at complex things like a cat, a car, a cement mixer, and all those kind of things. And then you break them into their most basic shapes. That makes anything manageable. It's like eating a steak. It's hard to eat a steak whole until you cut it up into little pieces. Once you learn how to assemble the little pieces, you can create anything from your mind. It's just relationships with basic forms, lit, and then put in three-dimensional space. There are these other little things called elements. For example, line, shape, color, texture, value, form, and space. All of those come together in order to create a functional piece of artwork. We will teach those simultaneously with these fundamentals. A very good painting comes from a very strong drawing background. A very good sculpture can come from a very strong drawing background, because what you're doing when you're drawing things in 3D on a 2D surface, your brain is having to take all that data and translate it into like a flat environment. Okay, if you can do that, then you're going to have really strong intuitive understanding of what form is, how things are put together, and then you can go and sculpt anything. The concept still applies. Likewise, you need to know how lighting and volume work, like surface contours and how light works on a surface. Combine those two and you can sculpt. The same goes into painting. You need to know how the surface of a form looks in order to think, what direction will my brush strokes go when I go to paint this strawberry? And before you can even make the strawberry, you got to really know what those form relationships look like. If you're going to be a photographer and work with composition, again, lighting is key. Lighting, another one of those big threes, is can you handle lighting and can you understand where perspective works? Where's the horizon line? Are you up or down or beside your form? And how does everything work within that 3D space? If you want to be a concept artist, this is another class that I teach here, entertainment design. You need to know all three of those. Good understanding of basic form, excellent understanding of lighting and volume, and then perspective in order to be able to create fantastic things that don't exist on this planet. If you're going to do environments, like whether drawing or painting, landscapes, again, you need to understand basic form, lighting, and perspective. If you want to be a cartoonist or a comic book illustrator, again, those big three are critical. The forms, lighting, and the perspective. And in architecture, they drill you hard, down to the mathematical, geometric angles of perspective and shapes and forms. So if you weren't in class this day, I brought up sports. I asked students, I said, hey, how many of you guys are involved in athletics or sports of some kind? And lots of hands went up. And then I asked them this question. I said, okay, so do you guys have practice? And they kind of went, yeah. And then I said, well, why? Why not just listen to what the coach says and then go play the game? And they start to laugh and say, well, because we'd be really bad. And I said, so that you learn these skills, right? And you have to practice them so you're good at them. And then the big game comes up, and then boom, whether or not your practice was effective or not, that determines your outcome in the game, correct? And they're like, well, yeah. And I said, well, it's the exact same way. You see, this class is hands-on, skill-based, because a lot of you guys are going to be learning skills that you've never done before. And there is no way around it. It takes time to do all of that. So I'll teach you the plays. I'll teach you how to dribble in class, but that won't be any good unless you guys practice the dribbling, if you practice the plays that I've taught you in class. And so at night, you'll have nightly homework assignments where you take the skills that I have taught you and apply them. But does practice matter? Here's a quick little breakdown from one of my advanced level art classes where it was a very, very practice heavy course. Now, if you look at the top, I took all my grades and I looked at the names of the students and I was able to remember and compare their homework grades with their lab assessments, their lab grades, the big game. How did they play in the big game? And those are the big grades. And all the students who earned a B through an A had very standard to substantial levels of homework practice. Those students who were in the C range to the F range ended up either having minimal to like no homework. So there is a definite correlation in this class where I grade you based on your skill level of these techniques. You must practice in order to become proficient at them and earn a higher grade, regardless of your talent or not. Now, there's a misconception when it comes to art classes that only people with talent succeed. And in my experience, and this is my personal opinion based on what I've seen, I don't believe that talent determines if a person is good at art or not. It just means that they are wired in such a way that when they learn it, it sticks. And not only that, because they love it so much, they do a lot more of it. And therefore, that just translates to more practice, and it gives the appearance that this person is very, very, very good. The difference between a talented person and a non-talented person is simply the speed at which they learn and the interest that they have in the subject matter. So for starters, you need a college-ruled notebook that's just for this class only. We're going to go into some pretty deep stuff, and taking notes is very, very important. If you just listen to me talk, you'll remember maybe 10% of it. If you write it down, you can go up to about 60% recall. So just the writing down act really helps. Not only that, but being able to study and brush up as you go. You need a cheap 8.5, 11-ish kind of a sketchbook. This is your gymnasium, and get it cheap. You don't want to get a big expensive one because you'll be all uptight not wanting to ruin this beautiful expensive sketchbook with bad drawings, and that's counterproductive. I want you to loosen up, get dirty, and really get gritty with your practice in this device. And remember, nobody's going to see it but me. This is where some of the cost comes from. These are drafting markers, and they're chisel tipped. There are 3 different values of gray. One's like a light gray, middle gray, and a dark gray. And this is what I use to teach you lighting. The reason I use markers is because it's way, way, way faster than using a pencil. Using a pencil takes a long time to build up the motor skill, and I'd really rather you just learn how to do all the light and the shadow, and then we attack the pencil medium later on its own. Now, by the way, these are hard to find. Usually you get them in packs of like 6 to 10. It's difficult to find them in groups of 3. I just want light, middle, and dark. And again, the bookstore is the place to go for that. You need a portfolio, a cheap one, about 17 by 22. You also need a folder. This is to store your work in the class and keep it all in one spot. The folder is so that you can keep your briefs and your handouts in one area. You need a mechanical pencil and a black ballpoint pen. Why mechanical pencil? That's for draftsmanship. A kneaded eraser is one of the strongest erasers out there. It can just about come close to picking up a little bit of ink even. And they're very cheap, they're very effective. And by next class, I'd like you to have your notebook ready. So some final things to know just to let you know. We're in a digital age where technology and the classroom are still trying to find their proper relationships with each other. And I'd like to share with you a piece of data that I discovered. And in hands-on classes, this is critical. Electronics have been the downfall of many of my students, and mainly from an electronics addiction. Last year, out of all my students who earned either a D or an F, they had, 100% of them, had problems using electronics appropriately in my classroom. That took the form of texting, anything that broke their concentration from the business at hand. Now, another trend is out of all my C students, about 3/4 of them had the same kind of problems. But here's the even more interesting thing. All of my A and B students, I couldn't remember a single time I told them to put an electronic device away or stop texting or whatever. They were glued to their work, they were on task, and it was just that black and white. If you plan on having a good GPA and learning in this course, then you must put away your electronics. It's that simple. So yeah, it's a challenging class. My goal is to make it challenging. That's the only way you can learn, is through rigor. If everything's simple, there's no investment, there's no need to do the effort to work and learn. And so likely you're going to need assistance, and I've hardwired quite a few systems into the class to assist you there. Many of them take place during school. Several of them take place outside of school, but that meets the needs of both students who have commitment issues in and out. So there's a lot of it. The first is I've taken every technique that I've ever taught, and I've made a YouTube channel called Aaron's Design Class. You can see demonstrations, you can see demos, and I break down the techniques even deeper than I do here in class. Now let's say you're in a situation where you need more time than class alone is able to provide. And remember, everybody learns at different rates. Some may need more time. Regardless, your work will still be due when even the fast person's is due. It's all due at the same day, deadlines. We need to work within deadlines to be functional employees today in our society. So I provide Open Studio that's every Thursday night here in the room until 5 p.m. and that gives you access to extra lab opportunities. And now I even do tutoring there too. So if you just don't get it and class isn't enough, the videos aren't enough, then meet with me and then we can have some one-on-one. If you have a study hall, you can get a hall pass from me, and your teacher from study hall could excuse you to come down and work in the class for extra lab time. Now there's one thing you want to be aware of. If I have another class during that time, all those kids, they have my attention during that time. So you'll probably be using this for self-guided, solo time. So that's pretty much everything we talked about during the orientation part. The only thing you would have missed afterward if you weren't here is that I went over an introductory motor skill exercise that was pretty fun. I showed students how to draw straight lines without a ruler, how to build up their body mechanics, and we used a fun little game called Bash to do that. You'll be doing a lot of that to warm up your arm in the mornings before we start getting into the actual learning in class. I really look forward to having you in class. Again, if you need anything, let me know, and I'll see you then. Bye.